inflation is the greatest lie ever told, right? It carries more weight because you wouldn't say that lightly.
Yeah.
But what does that mean?
And today we're breaking down why Bitcoin could be your ticket to true financial freedom. Today we're diving into Jeff Booth's mind-blowing interview on Bitcoin's path to infinity, why fiat money steals your time and energy, and how Bitcoin is the way out. So stay tuned.
Every minute you wait, Bitcoin climbs higher. The difference between success and regret? Taking action now. At Drip2 BTC, you get more than just Bitcoin. You get growth, security, and peace of mind. Buy Bitcoin, deposit it, and watch your future transform. No risk, no reward. Start earning at drip2btc.com.
Hey guys, welcome back. Drip Coach here with Drip and Farm for Poverty, where we don't trust, we verify, and operate with integrity and transparency. I have never actually shared anything from Robert Breedlove or even disclosed this, but Robert Breedlove orange-pilled me with his What is Money series podcast. Now, I haven't watched any of the episodes since then, but I was orange-pilled hardcore with this whole Saylor series on What is Money. And this was literally 4 years ago, and that's what kicked off his podcast. Like, that's what blew me away and drew me into the world of Bitcoin, was listening to Michael Saylor explain it from the Stone Ages to the Iron Ages and energy and all this stuff. And I was just like, what? Yeah, blown away by this. And this was like about 4 years ago. So that's how I actually got orange-pilled into Bitcoin. I was aware of the concept of it prior to this. As I mentioned to you guys before on my channel, way back in my military days, we were actually mining it on some old servers. As part of the network infrastructure team, we would get to play with all the old equipment whenever we wasted that money. I was telling you guys about every year you get to buy new equipment. So the old stuff, we would build game servers and test out like network protocols and all sorts of stuff that you're, got to test for the actual production environment, but also just to play around with. And we were actually like mining Bitcoin, but it was more just screwing around. And I have no idea. Those servers are in a landmine somewhere, or landfill somewhere. But regardless, coming in 2021 is when I really dove deep into Bitcoin. But as a lot of you guys probably followed a similar path, you skip over Bitcoin, you go, okay, well, I'm too late to Bitcoin. What's the next best thing? And you jump into all the alts and the shit tokens and all that stuff. But I just want to bring that up because on this recent podcast, he had Jeff Booth on there, and Jeff Booth is the one that coined that phrase that I've mentioned a couple times. From him, the natural state of the free market is deflation. And I keep echoing this because it's so simple. The words are super simple. Maybe deflation is the hardest one to wrap your head around, but there's nothing complex in that phrase, yet it is so profound, and I don't think many of us actually understand it. And again, in this clip, or a couple clips I'm gonna play from here, he's talking about, basically with this opening of how inflation is the greatest lie ever told. And that's insane when you think about it. It's like, wait a minute. Yeah, we've been told that there has to be some natural amount of inflation and it's good for the economy and blah, 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 blah. But that comes from the mindset of accepting that control is necessary, that having someone manipulate and determine the outcomes of our energy being monetized is the only way to play the game. And it's like, wait a minute, that doesn't seem right. Shouldn't I have a say so at this game that we're playing, since it's literally my time and energy? So I'm gonna go into this other clip and then we're gonna drop into some other ones from him, but just to finish this one off.
Think of the amount of pain that has caused the world when the choices were you could live in a world of abundance where the free market turned scarcity into abundance for all society. And we chose an inflationary monetary system over and over and over again that has to end in tens of millions of deaths, untold suffering around the world. And I would say most people still believe that it's required.
You keep using the phrase 8 billion people in service of 8 billion people. Yeah. Rather than having individuals working at cross purposes to one another, the great promise of Bitcoin is that we can have true alignment between individual self-interest and global collective self-interest.
It puts the best of us into a network for the best for us. It imposes a discipline. It forces the free market. For the first time in human history that we have a global free market. That's a big deal.
If Bitcoin does not.
That is insane as well when you think about it. Yeah, this is the first time in human history a global free market. Like never before was that available because you didn't have internet and digital scarcity. So like before, within the small tribes, you had your own free market. You traded your time and energy for, the hunters and gatherers or whatever, and you worked together and everybody benefited the tribe holistically. And of course, there were some that did more work than others, but at the end of the day, you determined what that value of worth was as a collective. And once money got introduced as a medium of exchange across your sweat equity and energy, then someone had to own or control that money and make that ledger to settle the accounts between two people, or more than two, actually. If it was just two, just you and that other person, then that's fine. But even then, you had people within the village that would settle disputes. So one person said you were owed one thing and another said you're owed something else. Then the village elder, chimes in and weighs in to try to, calm the storms between those two people. And then we outsource that to central banks, and the rest is history. But if you're not familiar, like with what Jeff Booth is saying, is that inflation, that slow rise in prices that we accept as normal, isn't actually natural. It's literally something created by design and by extension for control. And again, that's just super difficult to like wrap your head around. It's like, wait, control. Yeah, wait, I live freely. I do what I want. It's like, nah, not exactly. You are tied, your energy, your monetary worth is tied to this fiat currency, and everything you do to get that. And yet the people who create that don't do the same thing to get it. They actually can just make it, manipulate the ledger, do whatever it takes. And again, that's where this 2% of inflation comes in. So the idea is like, could we fix that? Like, what does that look like if your future wealth and energy was not being stolen? How do we fix that? Like, what's the remedy? What's the other system look like? And to get into that, we have to understand like how the actual economy works. And with technology, things should tend to move towards getting cheaper and faster and more abundant. Like if you go all the way back again to the farming days and even hunting, you had to go find the food. And then once we established husbandry and cattle ranching, you kept them within a quarantined area, and then you could breed them. So you no longer had to like go hunt them. They were right there next to you, but you still had to, slaughter and skin them and all that stuff. And then they made farms with machines and everything got faster. And then even with the food and stuff that they're feeding animals, they grew faster. All sorts of stuff happened. So that means things should have gotten cheaper and quicker because you also had less manual labor involved in that. So technology is the lever to which goods and services should get cheaper and cheaper over time. And that's where you got to start your framework, because we have technology, we have continued to expand, but yet for some odd reason, we don't see that reflected in the price. So let's go to that clip from Jeff.
And as a participant in the global market, then everything they use, they choose more value. And every entrepreneur that's competing in the global market has to compete against their choices. And they have to compete with what came before. So when you realize that, so you have a business, you have some business, you have entrepreneurs trying to create value, attacking that business, because the only way to create value is do something different, better than the other business, or new, that changes two businesses into one, or 10 into one, like the iPhone and all of the different things. You're constantly you're under pressure to create more value. And we use the things that provide more value. It's a very hard thing to do working in the free market, because you're competing globally around other entrepreneurs that also similarly want to provide value to somebody else. And anybody who works in that environment, works for those entrepreneurs, is doing the same thing. And we're choosing what's more valuable. So how could that process not allow prices to fall? It would have to. Fundamentally, it would have to mean prices fall. And then what I saw as I was writing my book, because I've been in technology for so long, I couldn't, in fact, I was talking about this process for 10 years before I wrote my book to anybody who would listen, because I couldn't understand why technology was becoming the base of everything. Every business was using it, becoming more and more automated. All technology is ideas in our head that we inscribe into silicon chips that are creating more and more value, essentially faster and faster automation and more value. And we would use the things that created more value. So it would mean as technology accelerated, or not accelerated, as it moved exponentially, while most people were measuring it linearly, then you should expect prices to fall faster and faster and faster. And from that perspective, then every person on the planet would get wealthier, even if they didn't work, because the global people working, trying to create value, would create value as a byproduct for them too. And
and that's what we are clearly not seeing. So technology is here, and things are instead getting more and more expensive. There is a great chart so that you can actually see how things are changing in real time, inflation basically against other goods and services. So if you've never been to this site, it's called inflationchart.com, and it allows you to evaluate one item against another, and based on a time frame. And then you can have logarithmic scale as well, and then the percentage rate if you want that in there. But what this will allow you to see is that due to inflation, things are always getting more expensive, or you could also say more valuable. So like in the S&P 500, you could see that the value of the S&P against money is up. We look at the NASDAQ, it's up as well. You look at inflation, right? So inflation is up as well, not as much, because you're going in a global M2 or M3 against inflation, but the green line is clearly up and to the right. Housing prices up and to the right. Like nothing gets cheaper when you are controlling the money supply. You can see this bounces around, but it's still clearly higher highs, higher lows, up and to the right. Now let's go back and look at the S&P 500 denominated against Bitcoin. What you see now is that Bitcoin increases and the S&P 500 stays flat. Like it actually is decreasing in value over time against Bitcoin. Well, not decreasing, but not as much. So from 1.3K, 1.4K to 6K in the same 20-year time span, almost 14-year time span. Sorry, math is off today. We said the NASDAQ, it's going to be the same thing, flat line. We look at consumer price index. Bitcoin is up, price index is flat. You look at housing price, slightly up. But like if you go back, it would have taken you, housing price here was $16 for Bitcoin back here and 174,000 per house. And then now you have Bitcoin at 84K and a $400,000 house. So that basically means you're able to get the same house with less Bitcoin at basically. And even we didn't look at food before, but like the food price index, flat. So everything denominated against Bitcoin, it falls against or stays flat. So your value accrual goes up, but the cost of those goods go down because you're denominating it against an asset that is fixed versus one that is inflated. So this leads to the definition that Jeff Booth has for the Bitcoin system and asking the question of what if a system was open, decentralized protocol bounded by energy that couldn't be cheated? Like what are the capabilities of a system like that? So let's find that clip here.
Architected in accordance with that truth. That could happen with anything, any revelation, any epiphany, spiritual awakening, all of these things. Why is Bitcoin catalyzing this type of transformation in people?
Well, so let's start it at a couple different levels of this. But let's start at the top level and just to ask a simple question. If you lived on a ledger that was manipulated and it had to be more manipulated over time and it was masquerading as a free market, wouldn't that same ledger accrue wealth and status to some people who were best at manipulating it? Probably, or didn't see it. And would there be any place to hide from if you knew that it was all based on that? Could you hide from yourself? Because it would lead to something in you that if you knew and you kept doing that, you could easily tell. You could say to yourself, you could tell yourself a story. I can't stop it. I'm just part of it. What most people will, but it'll lead to a mere reflection of the world we see because we're both the map and the territory. And then ask yourself, what if a system was you had an open, decentralized, secure protocol bounded by energy and couldn't be cheated? Wouldn't that also be a mirror? Wouldn't that also create a mirror reflection? And so those mirror reflections would be very different, right, over time. Right. One you would be telling yourself, I need to make enough money so I'm beating the other guy in a zero sum game. Yes. One you would actually be healing the world where it's not a zero sum game anymore, where everyone wins 8 billion people in service of 8 billion people. And so that would naturally over time. This could take a long time. And if people are listening to this and this is the first time they've heard Bitcoin,
that again, like he just comes up with these analogies or this way of simplifying things that I haven't heard from anyone else, but he's comparing these two systems. So it's like, yeah, what is the outcome of a system that is controlled, cheated, and used against you to some degree? Like, what does that cause each person playing those games to do? So it's kind of like this moral line that you have to draw in the sand. It's like, if you're going to sit down and play a game and you know the people you're playing with are going to be cheating, how long can you withstand that moral integrity on the sidelines and be like, I'm not going to cheat because they're cheating, when you're seeing how it affects, your family, your loved ones, your kids, whatever the case may be? And it's like, what do I have to do then to get ahead? And it's like, okay, well, that means you have to play the game with the rules that are in place. And that means it's a zero-sum game. Somebody's going to always end up losing. That's why we have poverty and all this stuff globally, because there's going to be someone with more money exploit those without. Yeah, I see it out here in Cambodia for some of the jobs that these people have to do that's available to them. They take it because there's no other options. And of course, the person with all the money is just like, well, you don't have any money, so take this job. And you're like, well, I have no choice. I got to feed my kids. So the flip side is if you have a system that is open, honest, transparent, decentralized, and cannot be cheated, well, how does that make other people respond in that game? Well, you have to play by those rules. Therefore, you're going to respond and play differently. And some, of course, will try to cheat it, like we've seen Bitcoin try to get hacked and things of that nature. But it almost eliminates all of that. Like it marginalizes a lot of those attack vectors. So say, for example, getting mugged if you're going to the ATM with, multiple thousands of dollars or whatever the case may be. Well, if you have Bitcoin seed phrase in your head, someone coming up to rob you, it's like, yeah, they could try to get you to share that phrase with them, but there's no incentive because there's no guarantee that you're going to do it. Like, you could literally just die. There's nothing they can pull off your corpse to get that from you. So it de-incentivizes violence to some degree, and it makes people have to kind of play by, again, these rules. So it's just fascinating kind of mental exercise to think through, to wrap your head around how revolutionary Bitcoin actually is. And like Jeff was talking about, the more you go down this rabbit hole, the more you feel like, okay, this is different. This is something that, yeah, as some Bitcoiners say, it's like freedom money or whatever you want to call it. There's just really no other way to define it, because every other definition we have comes from the history or systems of control. So we don't have a way to truly understand what this is and what its capabilities are, because it exceeds anything we've ever seen before. So I want to know what you guys think. I would encourage you. I know a lot of you guys don't watch long form content like this. It's 3.5 hours, but yeah, there were some solid gold gems in here, and I just barely scratched the surface. But if you have time, check it out on Robert Breedlove's YouTube channel, Bitcoin's Path to Infinity, exposing the greatest lie ever told, with Jeff Booth. Wow, episode 575. All right, smash that HBO special. Help a brother out. Like, subscribe, comment down below. And until next time, live daily and achieve your impossible. See ya.